Okay, welcome to our meeting. This is Reverend Dr. Roger Paul. Tonight we're going to continue our study on the foreword of the Urantia book, and we're on section 4, Universe Reality. And that starts on page 4.1, or in section, no, 6.6, in section 4.1. All right, and let's say a little prayer and we'll get started. Father, thank you for bringing us together again tonight, that we might study this book, that we might learn more and share it with others, and that we might benefit from it ourselves, that we might do your will more fully in our lives. We thank you for this opportunity, and we thank you for being with us tonight, watching over this meeting and the people participating in it. We say this in the name of your Son, Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Let's see here. I guess I'll start reading tonight. Universe reality. Reality differentially actualizes on diverse universe levels. Reality originates in and by the infinite volition of the Universal Father, and is realizable in 3 primal phases on many different levels of universe actualization. Okay, let's get into this right from the very start. All right, so what we're talking about reality is everything we know of and everything that is known, right? And it says that it actualizes, or it reveals itself on 3 different types of levels in the universe, okay? And it originates in and by the will of God, or the volition of the Universal Father. That's what they're talking about there, God's will. And basically, everything that is, both physical, mental, spiritual, all of it, is realizable in 3 primal phases on many different levels of universe actualization. In other words, it comes into existence in various phases, and that's what we're going to study here in this section tonight. So let's start with number 1. Diane, would you read the first paragraph?
Okay. Undeified reality ranges from the energy domains of the non-personal to the reality realms of the non-personalizational values of universal existence, even to the presence of the unqualified absolute.
So they're talking about here an undeified reality. What are we talking about? Let's go back up here to this chart of the 7 absolutes, and this will help us understand this a little bit better. All right? The 7 absolutes, and what they're talking about in this very first section is undeified reality. So that includes what? That includes the Isle of Paradise, all right, and the unqualified absolute, okay? The unqualified absolute is that part of God the Father that goes out and starts with primal force, and he gives the architects of the master universe and the universe, or the Paradise Power Directors, ability to manipulate these forces for the unqualified absolute. And before we get off this picture, I want to show you the other 2 things they're going to mention here in a second. First, the qualified absolute. That's the opposite of the unqualified absolute. You see that? The qualified absolute is also known as what? The deity absolute. Okay? And in between those 2 is the universal absolute. You notice here it says that it's the associative resolving absolute. So the universal absolute resolves deity or deitization both to the right and to the left. So if you took an arrow and pointed it out this way and pointed it out that way, it would include the universal absolute. It's the glue between the 2, okay? You'll also notice under the qualified absolute, it says revealed spiritual absolute. So everything that is spiritual in all the universes has to do with the deity absolute or the qualified absolute, right? And we know everything spiritual has to do with the Son, right? Okay, let's go back to the unqualified absolute. It says here the unrevealed physical absolute. So the unqualified absolute has to do with everything physical that's coming into existence. Okay, and that's part of the unqualified absolute.
Roger.
Now, yeah,
That includes Urantia,
that includes Urantia.
ultimatums.
Yeah, and the absonite beings, because remember the absonite beings are what? The architects of the master universe are absonite, right? They transcend time and space, and they would have to be part of the unqualified absolutes, taking primal force and creating matter with it, right? Okay, and remember, involved in this, all this, is the nuclear isle of paradise, right? And everything that's physical that comes into the universe, the pattern comes from paradise, right? So everything physical comes from paradise. So it's interesting here the way this is set up, because the universal absolute, I changed these around because it makes better sense. The universal absolute takes the deity part of the qualified absolute and pulls it over to the unqualified absolute and pulls the nuclear isle of paradise matter into the unqualified absolute and makes it possible for the fruition of the universes. That makes sense? And that's why they call this the associative or resolving absolute. So let's go back down here to where we were. And we'll take the next paragraph and we'll see what they're talking about as universe reality. Okay, so we just talked about the undeified absolute or the unqualified absolute, right? There's no deity there, right? So the first part, the very first thing of the types of reality, right? The non-personal realms of reality, all right? The non-personalizable values of universal existence is in the unqualified absolute. Why is it non-personalizable? Because there's no persons involved out there except what? The architects of the master universe and the power controllers. There's no other personalities, right?
And the absonites.
Huh?
And the absonites.
That's right. They're absonite. They're not personable, right? Okay, so let's go to the next one, number 2. Millie, would you take number 2 for us?
Yes. Number 2, deified reality embraces all the infinite deity ranging upward through all realms of personality, from the lowest finite to the highest infinite, thus encompassing the domain of all that which is personalizable and more, even the presence of the deity absolute.
Okay, so the deity absolute, the very first one on that chart, all the way to the left, embraces everything having to do with deity and personality, all the way from the lowest finite beings to the highest infinite beings. Now, how is the lowest finite beings deified? Good question, right? Because we know we're not born deity, are we? We're given personality by God the Father. How do we become deified? Through the thought adjustment.
Yes, the little being that came to us from God.
That's right. The little part of God that came from us is the deified reality that came from God. And the other part that came from God is what? The personality. So everything having to do with deity and personality comes from the deity absolute. Make sense? Or God the Father. All right. Now, when you take the undeified and the deified, what do you have to do? You have to bring them together, right? And that's what the next paragraph is about. Bill, would you take that one?
Okay. 3. Interassociated reality. Universe reality is supposedly either deified or undeified. But to sub-deified beings, there exists a vast domain of interassociated reality, potential, actualizing, which is difficult of identification. Much of this coordinate reality is embraced within the realm of the universal absolute.
Okay, notice that very first word in this paragraph, interassociated reality. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
The universal absolute is that mechanism that associates both the deified and the undeified. Okay? So it's, as we say, the glue that pulls things together. It also includes both deified or undeified beings or sub-deified beings. What are they talking about? These could be beings that are needed to run the universe that either don't have personality, don't have deity, that are mechanical type of beings in origin. They may not even have the basic personality of being self-aware, okay? But they function. Okay, like a automaton almost. You know, there's a lot of beings out there that do certain jobs over and over and over and over and over again. They don't think about doing the jobs, they just do them because that's what they were born to do. Okay, and this is the domain in which the universal absolute becomes involved. Okay, and then it talks about here this. Also in this domain is both the potential and actualizing beings, which would include part of us in ways, because we have potential to become what? Citizens of the universe through the thought adjuster. So we have potential to become real sons of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that sense, we are actually what? Actualizing. When we become real sons of God by fusing with the adjuster, we become deified, right? And that at that point, we have become actualized as real citizens of the cosmos or the universe, right? And then there's many other types of beings out there, much like us, that they don't even have words. They call it difficult of identification. There's no way to explain them to us because we have no reference point, right? Okay, but all of this reality is embraced within the realms of the universal absolute, that absolute that brings deified and undeified together.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make that a little clearer?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to talk about the potential and actualizing.
Right.
The potential, that's what God makes in us when He makes our personalities before we are, born.
Yes. Yes.
And then we actualize that when we start living.
Well, we start to actualize it. It doesn't finish actualizing until we fuse with the adjuster, right? So really, if you think about the Urantia state, as Rodney asked a little bit earlier, is part of that actualizing state to spirituality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the universal absolute becomes part of our domain in the fact that we go from a finite being to a Urantia being to eventually a full stage spirit, right? So in between stages, we have potential and then we eventually actualize 100%. We won't finish actualizing until we actually stand before God the Father and become finaliters. And there's a caveat to even that. When we stand before God the Father and become finaliters, we are 6-stage spirits. Okay? 6, not 7th stage spirits. We will not become 7th stage spirits until all 7 super universes reach light and life, and the Supreme comes into full fruition. At that point, we become 7th stage spirits. Okay?
Mhm.
So that's important to know that too. All right, so did I muddy that up enough?
That's very clear. That's very clear.
All right, let's go on to the next one. Rodney, would you take the next one?
Yes. This is the primal concept of original reality. The Father initiates and maintains reality. The primal differentials of the reality are the deified and the undeified. The deity absolute, and the unqualified absolute. The primal relationship is the tension between them. This Father initiated divinity tension is perfectly resolved by and internalizes as the universal absolute.
Now you're beginning to see how it all comes together. The Father initiates all primal reality. He started out with the deified and the undeified, right? And in having the deity absolute and the unqualified absolute. Now remember, the deity absolute is also called the qualified absolute, right? All right, so the primal relationship and the tension between these two opposites, the deity absolute and the unqualified absolute, no deity, right? The primal relationship is a tension between them all the time, right? And this tension, this divinity tension, is resolved by the universal absolute. It's the go-between between the deity absolute and the unqualified absolute, right? And that's the best way to explain it. All right, and it's going to break it down even further here. Okay, so let's go on to the next part. From the viewpoint of time and space, reality is further divisible as 1. Actual and potential. Realities existing in fullness of expression in contrast to those which carry undisclosed capacity for growth. The eternal Son is an absolute spiritual actuality. Mortal man is very largely an unrealized spiritual potentiality. So there's where you have the actual and potential. The eternal Son is what? The actual, right? Mortal man is what? A potential. We start out a potential and eventually become a full spirit person, right? So then that unrealized spiritual potentiality actually becomes full spirit. It becomes realized spiritual, right? Okay, so there's a good example of actual and potential. The deities being the actual, mortal man being the potential, right? Okay, Diane, would you take the next one?
Absolute and sub-absolute. Absolute realities are eternity existences. Sub-absolute realities are projected on 2 levels. Absonites, realities which are relative with respect to both time and eternity. Finites, realities which are projected in space and are actualized in time.
Okay, so we have an existence that's considered absolute, and we have an existence which is called sub-absolutes, right? Who would be absolute existences? Paradise citizens, right? They're absolute beings. They're born perfect. They have all the potential when they're born, right, of everything, right? Sub-absolute is anything below that, which includes absonites, all right? These are realities which are relative to both time and space, or time and eternity, right? And then we have finites, which are projected in space but are actualizing in time. As we go up the ladder and become more and more like God, we're actualizing through time, right? So we have really two separate levels. We have the absolute level and a sub-absolute level. And including in the sub-absolute includes both the absinites and the finites, right? Because they're still actualizing. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Millie, would you take the next sentence?
Yes. Existential and experiential. Paradise deity is existential, but the emerging supreme and ultimate are experiential.
Okay, so we know the paradise deities are existential, always have been, always will be, right? But the supreme and ultimate are growing through the experience of all beings in all 7 super universes, right? And that will be the case as we go out into the outer space levels, and that will have to do with the ultimate, right? And both of these beings, the supreme and the ultimate, are experiential. They are gaining experience as we experience. So as all these billions of people experience things, this experience goes into the supreme first, and eventually that experience, it winds up in the ultimate, okay? All right, and we're going to see a picture of that a little bit later too. All right, let's go on to the next one. Bill, would you take the next one, please? Turn your mic back on, Bill.
I hope the audio is working good, because on my end it sounds like it's breaking up.
Yeah, you're kind of
You're
scratchy.
breaking up, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know why.
Personal and impersonal. Deity expansion, personality expression, and universe evolution are forever conditioned by the Father's free will act, which forever separated the mind, spirit, personal meaning, and values of actuality and potentiality, centering in the eternal Son, from those things which center and inhere in the eternal Isle of Paradise.
So, okay, everything deity expands into and everything personality expresses itself into is in the universe evolution are all conditioned by God's will. Okay, whatever God's will is in His act. And it's already separate. It's always separated by mind, spirit, and personal meanings and values. What does that mean? It's separated by the mind circuit of the infinite spirit, the spirit circuit of what? The eternal Son, right? And the personal meanings and values of the personality circuit of the universal Father, okay? And it says here that actuality and potentiality centering, everything centers in the eternal Son, and from those things inhere in the eternal Isle of Paradise, because the eternal Isle of Paradise is the impersonal part. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
The personal part is deity and the expression of deity and everything having to do with mind and spirit and personal values, right? Meanings and values. But paradise has no what? Deity, right?
Right.
Paradise has no what? Personality, right? So that's why in reality there are two things. There's a personal reality and an impersonal reality, right? What would be another impersonal reality? Anything having to do with the unqualified absolute, right? Because personality has not kicked in to manage that yet, right? So anything that's developing, like in the outer space levels, is what? An impersonal reality right now, right? Okay, let's go on. I think I'm up next, am I not? Paradise. Paradise is a term inclusive of the personal and non-personal focal absolutes of all phases of universe reality. Paradise properly qualified may connote any and all forms of reality, deity, divinity, personality, energy, spiritual, mindal, or material. All share paradise as a place of origin, function, and destiny as regards to values, meanings, and factual existence. So paradise is the focal starting point of all reality because of what? Deity lives on paradise, right? God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit. Always there. That's what makes the paradise inclusive of personal, right? But it's also inclusive of all non-personal focal absolutes, right? And that would include all those things that does not have personality, like energy, mindal, material, function, things like that. Okay? But paradise is the only place like that. Okay, let's go on because it tells us more. Diane, would you take the next one?
The Isle of Paradise. Paradise, not otherwise qualified, is the absolute of the material gravity control of the first source and center. Paradise is motionless, being the only stationary thing in the universe of universes. The Isle of Paradise has a universe location, but no position in space. The Eternal Isle is the actual source of the physical universes, past, present, and future. The nuclear Isle of Light is a deity derivative, but it is hardly deity. Neither are the material creations a part of deity. They are a consequence.
So paradise itself is not deity, right? Mm-hmm. It's the consequence of the will of the Father. Because of the will of the Father, paradise was created or came into being, right? As a dwelling place for Him, His Son, and the infinite Spirit, right?
Eventuated.
It really eventuated, if you would like to call it that, right? Mm-hmm. It is the source of all that is physical. It has no motion. It sits stationary in the center of the universe of universes, but all gravity comes from it. All the circuits come from it, the personality circuit, the mindal circuit, the gravity circuits. All these things come from paradise, right? Because that's the dwelling place of God the Father, right? So everything is attached to paradise, even the creations of all the universes and all universes that will ever come into being, because what? The unqualified absolute originates from where? Paradise.
Paradise.
Because that's where God the Father is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything starts from where? Paradise.
Roger, what does it mean? No position in space.
In other words, it's got no position in space because most things that have a position in space are in motion. Everything in space is in motion, okay? So since everything is in motion, that means you have a specific position in that continuous motion, okay? So that's why we have a position in space. The world that we live in has a position in our local universe, right? It goes around the sun, right? And our local universe is part of a super universe that rotates around Uversa, right? And that whole super universe rotates around Havona. And that rotates around what? Paradise. Right? Okay, so that means that if paradise is the only thing stationary in all the universes and super universes, that it has no position because it's the center point of position. You follow me? it does not move. Everything moves around it, right? And that's hard to understand, because it says it has a location but no position. You see that? The location is the center of everything, right? But it has no position, because nothing affects it. It affects everything else, right? It's a physics thing, really, more than anything. Make sense? It's kind of understand, because it sounds like double talk, but it's not at all, because there is a location. You can find the location of paradise as you travel in towards it, right? But it has no position, because while you're traveling it in towards it, your position changes constantly, right? So if we left the earth today and we started towards paradise, and let's say it takes 1 billion years to get to paradise, our position and state in time will change 1 billion times, right? But paradise will not change ever. It remains constant, okay? And it's interesting here too, they'd say the nuclear isle is a deity derivative, but is hardly deity. In other words, because of deity living there and creating it, or eventuating it, however it was made, it is there because of deity, right? But it is not deity itself. And the other thing it mentions here is the material creations aren't part of deity either. So all the creations on paradise are the consequences of deity being there. Okay? All right, let's go one more paragraph to muddy it a little bit more. Millie, would you take the next one?
Yes, I have a question.
Go right ahead.
Okay, it's the only thing that's stationary. The Isle of Paradise has a location but no position, and it's always at the center of everything.
Always.
So as everything moves around, its position changes to be the center of whatever's going on.
Well, it doesn't change though, Millie. That's what we're trying to tell us, is that the location is always exactly the same. But
it's always in the middle of everything.
It's always in the middle of everything, but everything moves around it, but it does not move. Okay? Mm-hmm. And there's a reason for that, if you think about it. If you think about the gravity fields in space, gravity starts in what? Neither paradise, right? And the only way that gravity can work so that we'll go all the way back around and come back in is for paradise to be totally stationary. Okay? So that's why everything surrounding paradise moves, because it has to do with paradise gravity. Okay? But if it was moving, then that gravity would have to be adjusted constantly, because we're talking about billions and billions and billions of planets and universes that would have to be constantly adjusted to keep the gravity stable. Where if paradise is always in the same place, same location, it does not have to change, and gravity itself can change to take care of all creation. All right? Kind of hard to understand. All right. That makes sense, Millie?
Not really, but we'll go on.
We'll go on. All right.
Paradise is not a creator. It is a unique controller of many universe activities, far more of a controller than a reactor. Throughout the material universes, paradise influences the reaction and conduct of all beings having to do with force, energy, and power. But paradise itself is unique, exclusive, and isolated in the universes. Paradise represents nothing, and nothing represents paradise. It is neither a force nor a presence. It's just paradise.
So it's unique in all the creation, and there's nothing like it, and nothing ever will be like it, right? It's like a universe controller of everything, and everything that surrounds it reacts to it. Okay? So that's why they call it a controller more than a reactor, right? It influences reactions of everything having to do with beings, force, energy, power, planets, universes, everything, right?
Roger,
Yeah,
paradise represents nothing?
it represents nothing because there's nothing like it, right? There's nothing associated that you could say is like paradise. Nothing. All right. And then it goes on to say that nothing represents paradise either. So, in essence, what's it saying here? It's saying that paradise is unique within itself. There is no way, never will be, never has been, nothing throughout all eternity. There will never be another paradise.
Because that's the dwelling of God.
Because that's the dwelling place of God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit, right? So there will never be a duplicate, right, of paradise. And that's why nothing represents paradise. No matter what anybody tells you, if they tell you this represents paradise, you can call them a liar, because it's not true. Nothing represents paradise. Paradise is unique within itself, right? It's neither a force nor a presence. So it's not something we could call a force, and we can't call it a presence because there's nothing akin to even describe that you could say is like paradise, right? And that's why it says here, it represents nothing, and nothing represents paradise. It's just paradise.
Comment.
Yeah.
It says far more of a controller than a reactor.
Right.
Now, could it actually be, said that paradise is a reaction to the thought of God to begin creation?
Yeah, you could say that. It's the
Hence, it is reacting to the first thought of God,
right. Yeah.
the first pattern.
Yeah. But going back to that, Bill, you could also say that it is the controlling thought of God, right? Not
Right.
just the reaction of God. It's the
No,
controlling.
it's controlling the rest of the universe of universes in Havona rather than God's thoughts. But, God's thoughts are controlling everything.
Right. Actually, you can think of it this way. It's probably the easiest way to think of it is this. First, there is the thought or the volition of God, and paradise is the result of that thought, right? Or volition.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because when God separated himself to make the Son and the Spirit, right? What happened? Paradise appeared in Havona.
Right.
Right? That's the way they explain it to us anyway. And we could beat it to death from now on, and we probably won't really understand it 100%. This is probably the most simple way they could explain it to us to give us some understanding of what paradise is, right? All right. And as we go on in the book, there's sections that goes into a lot more detail, right? All right. Let's go on. We got about 15 more minutes. Let's get into personality realities, part 5. All right, who's up? Who just read? I think Millie read. Rodney, would you take personality realities, the first paragraph?
Sure. Personality is a level of deified reality and ranges from the mortal and midway or level of the higher mind activation of worship and wisdom up through the moral and spiritual to the attainment of finality of personality status. This is the evolutionary ascent of mortal and kindred creature personality, but there are numerous other orders of universe personalities.
Okay, so they're telling us that the personality that we are given by God the Father, right,
Mhm.
is a level of deified reality. And how is that? Because it gives us the opportunity to fuse with the thought adjuster, right, and become a real son and daughter of God, right? And it's this reality that ranges through mortal, midwayer, and even the higher levels through the use of worship and wisdom. And from there, we go through the morantial, right, the cosmic awareness, right, become cosmic citizens, to the spiritual level, and eventually to the finality of personality status. What would that be? That's when we become finaliters, right, and stand before God,
Mhm.
right? And it says here, it's the evolutionary ascent of mortal and kindred creature personality. What's it saying here? This is an interesting sentence. We could spend hours on this.
That this just doesn't happen on all universes.
Huh?
This isn't the same on all universes.
It's not the same on all universe, right? That's what it's saying here. It's the evolutionary ascent of mortal and kindred creature personality. What's kindred creature personality? This is all these aliens we're talking about, right? All right, all these beings on other types of planets, right, that look a little different from us, that have differences in the way they live, the way they think, the way they dwell, that sort of thing, right? Kindred creature personality. And then it goes on to tell us, but there are numerous other orders of universe personalities. These are ones they don't even mention to us, right? So are we alone in the universe?
No.
Not at all, right? And all these different types of creatures and beings are blessed with personality that comes from where?
God the Father.
God the Father. That's right. So what does that make all these other kindred creatures?
Brotherhood of man.
Brotherhood of man, our brothers and sisters,
Mhm.
right? So all these
Brotherhood
aliens that
of
everybody's
man.
afraid are going to
Brotherhood.
come down and zap us and kill us and all this stuff are what? Our brothers and sisters, right?
Mhm.
Remember Jesus said when he was on the planet, he is of the opinion that the universe, all the universe is friendly towards him, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
All the universe is friendly towards them. So should we not assume that all the universe, most beings are what? Friendly. Not out to take over our world, not out to kill us, not out, all this fear about aliens visiting the planet and spaceships coming down and all that. That's okay. They can land in my front yard. I'm not afraid of them,
They're afraid of you.
They're afraid of us because we're so barbaric.
Such a violent, barbaric planet.
That's right. They are. So that's the point I wanted to make, that we are all kindred creature personalities, and that personality comes from God. And do you think God is always friendly to us? Of course.
Yes.
We're his children,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's try to get a couple more paragraphs here.
I was talking about that very thing today on Facebook about, God being friendly to us, and how, one person I was made a comment about the Bible and many different types of God, and I say, yeah, God is friendly to us. He is not ashamed that he made us. He
No.
loves us. He's with us.
So that means he's not angry, is he, Bill? He's not
No.
jealous of us. He's not all these things that we were taught that God is, and once it sends us to hellfire and brimstone and all this thing is error and thought, right? Because we don't understand the personality of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what it boils down to. You know, we've been taught wrong. All right. Let's see, who's up next?
Did you just read?
Huh?
You just read.
I just read. I think you're up next.
Reality is subject to universal expansion, personality to infinite diversification, and both are capable of well-nigh unlimited deity, coordination, and eternal stabilization. While the metamorphic range of non-personal reality is definitely limited, we know of no limitations to the progressive evolution of personality realities.
Did y'all catch that?
I know none.
No limitations of personality realities. So because we are gifted with personality, all right, and there's an infinite diversification of this personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's an unlimited deity coordination and eternal stabilization. So as these personalities include ourselves, go through the universe and grow and grow and grow, we become more and more coordinated with the concepts of deity, right, or God the Father, and we become more and more stabilized as we go through eternity, right? And it says here, while the metamorphic range of non-personal reality is definitely limited, we know of no limitations to the progressive evolution of personality realities. What's that telling us? That there is no limitation of our experience in the universe. So as we grow and we become more and more spiritual, when we become finaliters, and we, as Millie asked this afternoon, as we go out to the other 6 super universes, right? We continue to expand. We continue to evolve. We continue to add to our personality realities indefinitely. And that doesn't stop with the 7 super universes. That keeps going out into the outer space level.
It was just the 7 super universes.
Right.
Yeah, we're talking about billions and billions and billions of years, right? So there's really no limit for us as being personal beings of what we can accomplish and learn and experience.
Well, now, what about the saying, be ye perfect as I am perfect?
That's our goal, right?
That's our goal.
That's our goal. It will always be our goal.
Personality reality.
Yeah, as we expand through these learning experiences on the way to God the Father, that will always be our goal, won't it, Bill? To be perfect.
Right.
Become more and more perfect like God the Father is perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
We had
meanwhile, don't beat ourselves up because we're here in this imperfect state.
That's exactly That's exactly right. Now it's interesting. Let me see what's coming up here. Let me see where I can go to without. Oops, personality. I didn't overshoot it. All right. Let's do one more paragraph, and then I want to tell you all about something real quick. Who is next? I believe Millie's next. Millie, would you take the next one?
Yes, which one is it?
On attained experiential
Okay.
level.
On attained experiential levels, all personality orders or values are associable and even co-creational. Even God and man can coexist in a unified personality, as is so exquisitely demonstrated in the present status of Christ Michael, Son of Man, Son of God.
So that's a perfect example, right, of how finite man and deity values, right, or experiential levels can coexist in the same personality. You see that? So even though
Christ Michael is unique.
he is, but he was our example. That's our goal, to take our finite existence and what? Incorporate the personality orders and values of deity within us, right?
Mm-hmm.
We become what? Sons of God and sons of man, just like Jesus, right? I'm going to tell y'all about something before we close real quick. We got about 5 minutes. Let me tell y'all about this. Diane and I was looking for something on YouTube, and we found this video. Do you remember the name of that thing?
Spiritual.
Spiritual something or other, Horizons or something like that. Anyway, it was a program from 2007, I believe it was. Anyway, it had 4 people that were readers of the Urantia book, and they were commenting. This guy was interviewing them and commenting, asking questions about the book and stuff, and these people were commenting about how the Urantia book has affected their lives. And it was just a wonderful video. It really was interesting. There were 2 parts of it. Part 1 was much better than part 2, but it just raises your joy in your heart to such a level to see that there are people out there doing what we're doing. That exploring the book and trying to incorporate it into their lives and benefit all mankind at the same time,
And they're accomplishing that.
And they're accomplishing that. So it's going on out there, and we forget being in our own little group and that sort of thing. We don't actually see a lot of other people sometimes and that sort of things. But the things we do and the things we say, even on these videos, people listen to, and hopefully we all benefit from it, and we all learn from each other. And I just wanted to mention that tonight, that we really enjoyed that. If I can find the link to it, I'll send it to y'all.
It's well worth.
It's was it a 2-hour video or a 1-hour video?
Each one was.
Each one was
a total of 8 people. Each program had 4 people.
Yeah, I'll try to shoot it over to you. It's on YouTube. And even though it's years ago, everybody was dressed different. You can tell it was
hairstyle.
Yeah, his hairstyles were different and everything. But, people are still the same, right? They really are.
It'd be nice to see an updated version of that was current,
Yeah, it would. You want to say a prayer tonight?
Okay. Dearest Father, Mother God, we just thank you so much for this opportunity to grow and to learn your revelation. Even though it's very difficult for us to expand our consciousness to this point where we can clearly understand it, we thank you for this ability to at least to grow and attempt the understanding of your deity, your whole creation plan. And we're just so grateful that Roger can explain certain things and break it down so that we can also understand that all the things that we're experiencing in life and watching on television and Science Channel and History Channel, that everything is pertinent and relative to what we are learning tonight, what we've learned tonight, and what we're working on. And we just thank you so much for this, that we can be a part of this whole experience of living and growing and jumping off into the mansion worlds and going on through the whole plan that you have, the divine plan that you have for us. It's such a privilege and honor to be part of the program and part of the experience. And we just thank you so much. It's in your name, Jesus Christ, Michael of Nebadon, we pray and give thanks. Amen.
Amen. And thanks everyone at home for joining us. Please come see us again, whether you're online or just listening on live with us when we stop the recording here.